And we're back. Another episode. Hey, Kelly.
Hey, Brandon.
It is the Do Not Call Me Karen podcast. Maybe we should change it to Do Not Call Us Karen.
Like anyone would call you a Karen.
No, they call me a Ken, right?
A Ken. I don't think so. A Chad.
Yeah, a Chad, a Ken,
A Brett. That's always
a
me.
Brett. Yes, there you go. So, yeah. So, welcome back, guys. Thank you for joining us. If
Yes,
this
thank
is
you.
your first time with us, welcome. Hope you enjoy it. We're going to enlighten you and entertain you. Is that the
Yes,
best way to
definitely.
describe it? All right. There we go. Well, because Kelly is just a wonderful, whatchamacallit, a talent scout.
Talent scout.
Yeah, she
I'm
just.
going to add that to my resume.
Yes, you just have a plethora of interesting and educated and
I do
woke
have that,
people that you
indeed.
can draw from that will get on camera and
Yeah.
and do this thing. So I'll let you do the honors.
Okay, so we are so honored to have my friend and former colleague, Alana Burman, here with us tonight. Alana is also a political communications professional, and she's very good at what she does. So we're super excited to have her here and to talk about some of her experiences. We've been talking a lot about racism in the past few episodes.
Yes, we have.
Because that's a lot about what this show is about, but it's kind of, we're trying to focus on a lot of issues related to equity.
Right. Well, I think I've said it before. The algorithm of racism is actually hurts everybody. So it's just not for black people. It's also applied to gay people and people of different religions. Actually, anybody who is different.
Right.
So, which is what it's always perplexing, like when a black person is like against gay people or something. It's like, are you serious? Because that's the same.
Like, can't we get together and fight
Right,
this cause
right.
together?
It's the same way of thinking. So this is a great platform to delve into all of those things and try to make a change. So,
Alana, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? There's been some interesting occurrences in recent times where you live. You live in the city of Trenton,
Yeah.
right?
And I think what's really interesting about what has occurred to me in Trenton is some of my background a little bit, if you don't mind me
Oh,
going into
sure.
it.
Yeah.
So I started my professional career in the Mississippi Delta as a public school teacher.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wow.
In the heart of the Delta, Greenville, Mississippi, I taught there for 3 years with Teach for America. And what was really fascinating about that was it really sparked my passion for social justice and equity. Seeing my students there, I taught in a public school that was 99.9% free and reduced lunch, 99.9% African American or Black.
Right.
And so seeing my students who had all of their white counterparts in the town all went to private schools. So seeing a functionally segregated city, the fifth largest city in Greenville. And I was one of the first white teachers my students had interacted with on a regular basis. And what was fascinating was, and I'll go into this a little bit later, was the city was historically Jewish. And I was the first Jewish person that either my students or my colleagues had ever met.
Wow.
And so that alone was really eye-opening. And so then to make the conscious choice to go from that environment to Trenton, because I felt like I understood some of the issues facing the city. I started out as a teacher in Trenton, and I knew how important it was to live within the community that you were teaching and serving.
That's awesome.
And so then to have all the intentions and investment in the right place when you move somewhere, and then to experience what I later did was really jarring.
Yeah. And I mean, you're a minority in the city of Trenton as a white person, right? But also as a Jewish person.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think the minority status really comes from being a Jew, more so. I feel it more as a minority, as a Jewish person within the city, not as a white person. As a white person within the city, I still have a lot of very obvious benefits and privileges when I interact with the local police force, when I'm interacting with city workers, many different advantages. Like, for example, my old roommate was a slightly older Black man, and he worked in the cafeteria of the DEP. I lost my keys one day, needed to go pick up the house keys from him. I could just march right in. They just kind of like waved me through because I was dressed appropriately, and I'm assuming, you know.
Right.
He would have been stopped at the door twice over, I'm
Yeah.
sure. So,
Yeah.
but as a Jew, I mean, I see the original synagogue and the original Jewish cemetery in Trenton is now a government building, and there's just a little plaque outside.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
that at one point, here lie Jews.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we get into everything that's been going on in the city, I just I want to mention. So when we were speaking to the Penn State group a few weeks ago,
Yes.
anti-Semitism came up, right? And we were
Correct.
talking, and it actually made me think of Alana, even though I didn't talk about it with you at the time. But we were talking about some of the horrendous, like blatant racism that politicians get they get away with right now, right, in the
Right.
country. And we were kind of having a discussion, like, you used to be able to kind of do that in an anti-Semitic way, but it's a little bit more reined in than the racism right now, you were saying, you think. But then
Right.
it came to mind that not necessarily. Like,
Right.
Alana, you wait till you hear what has gone down in the city of Trenton regarding anti-Semitism.
Yeah, so on a very local level, I would say there's been, I think my place anecdotally. So what I dealt with in Trenton was within the past year, 375 days or however many days are in a year. My councilwoman, my ward councilwoman, my direct elected official, defended her colleague's use of the term Jew down in referring to negotiations. And the term, actually, the person who was supposed to be Jewing others down was, in fact, a Jewish lawyer.
Okay. All right.
So kind of just doubling it down there. And so she wasn't even the person who originally used the term. That was the council president. And this was somebody who didn't use it originally, but came to her defense of using the term and repeatedly used it then in casual conversation defending the original use of the term. I engaged her on social media where she was defending the use of the term. I identified myself as her constituent,
Okay.
that she was my direct elected official. And she defended to me and accused me of racism that I dared challenge a black woman about being anti-Semitic.
How dare you?
I know. And since then, I've had other interactions with local county elected officials who are county committee members who have taken a similar stance, supporting the statements made originally by Nick Cannon, for example.
Right.
And I even had one county committee member who I was trying to speak to about the danger of her defending this language. She publicly called into question whether I was even really Jewish because I was white, and accused me of being a usurper.
I didn't know that. I didn't know.
Yeah, so this was like...
I remember your involvement, and I was like encouraging you to run for office then.
Yeah, and it's been really like an interesting, that was an interesting launching point too, the council statements, because also the entire city council decided to not censor the use of that language. There was zero repercussions or reprimand, and that was, I believe, a 7-person council. And only 2 people voted to censure. So there was 5 other members of the council, 3 of them who had used the language, and then the other 2 who just found no implicit wrongdoing.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of people who don't understand what anti-Semitism is. They don't understand, so at University of Delaware, I took Holocaust class, English Holocaust class, and I'm scarred for life because we actually saw the actual footage of people waiting in line to get onto a metal bed and be pushed into an incinerator, or to wait in line to go into a gas chamber. Saw images of skulls stacked up a story tall. They're waiting to extract the gold out of the teeth of of people they executed. So a lot of people don't know that part of the history. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy for them to dismiss the sensitivity that the Jewish community feels.
And it's just another form of generational trauma too.
Right.
didn't happen all
Right.
that long ago in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
And generational trauma is a very real thing for people who have experienced that, regardless of what the type of trauma is. And so interesting that you mentioned that. So one of my earliest memories is going to synagogue growing up. And in the back of all of our prayer books, Sidors, the only thing in English in the entire book, mind you, are these first-person accounts of the Holocaust from survivors of what they saw and experienced. And it's the only thing in English in the entire book. And, you know, these are long religious ceremonies. You're a little kid, you're fussy, but the only thing you have to do or to read that you can read in your native language is English are these first-person accounts of, you know, one of them that has always stood out in my mind was a woman witnessed a mother with her infant getting off of one of the cattle cars. And the SS soldier took the baby from her and swung it around and smashed its head on the ground.
Oh my gosh.
And that was, you know, that was just one of those that as a kid, you read that, I'm like, you know, 12 years old, and it still gives me chills, and I still remember that it was like 5 lines, but I remember it vividly.
It's horrific. And it goes back to the point of what we were talking about earlier. Like, if we could all just work together, right? I mean, there's so many different ways that, you know, minority groups have been oppressed throughout history. And if we could just get on the same page.
And even there's evidence throughout history, you know, even with the Americas, of minority groups getting together for a common good, right? And, you know, there is a history there. And I think, you know, recently, through the divisive politics that we've been dealing with over the past 20, 30, 40 years, people have forgotten that, and many groups have forgotten how to organize. And we've started to see that change, I think, with like the Women's March, with Black Lives Matter, with all kinds of other important social movements.
Yeah, what I would like to see. So one of my issues just with in the correction of trying to teach, and I'm just gonna isolate the white man, right? Because he seems to be at the core of whenever we're talking about, you know, being discriminated and all that, right? They're dismissive, but we're also very aggressive at times, right? So how do you have a dialogue? How do you have this a dialogue in which we can teach you, like, hey, let me explain to you why using the term Jew down is offensive. Okay, this is why it's offensive to ask to touch a person's hair or to say these things. Normally it doesn't go down like that. It's like instant, you know, hairs are standing on people's on their backs, and it gets very vicious. Like an example of Nick Cannon. What Nick Cannon said was stupid, right? The whole conversation was stupid. But I think what people really reacted to was just how swiftly his career in that sense was ended, which in a way that kind of perpetuates anti-Semitism, because the people that don't understand, well, all they see is like, okay, when something happens to a black person, you know, you don't see the kind of swift justice, you know, financial justice that took place with Nick Cannon or any other group, right?
And I think that's misplaced anger, though, right?
Right. It's definitely misplaced
definitely.
anger. It doesn't happen. So, like, in that particular situation, I'm like, so I think they tried to talk to him, and he didn't apologize.
He didn't
this
right away.
Okay.
So what ended up happening was actually, as far as I recall, his mother ended up sitting him down and actually explaining that he had Jews in his own family.
Right.
And that's when it started to hit home, when he started to see both the impact on his immediate family, how it was stressing out his mother, but also then sitting and reflecting with his own family history and what what he had learned through his interactions and education afterwards.
Right. And I mean, he just should have just apologized.
Yeah, when you mess up like that, I mean, people make mistakes. I think humans are very forgiving. I mean, I think you just have to own that I was ignorant. I have learned, you know,
Right.
I made
I've
a
done it
horror.
plenty.
Oh, me too. I
lived
do it
in the
every day. So,
South. Like,
yeah.
oh my God, the amount of time. My friends down there were so gracious with me.
Yeah.
Erica, shout out to you.
But your councilwoman in Trenton, she's not been receptive, right, to
She
learning.
actually
I mean,
blocked me
because then
immediately after.
there were slurs then that she made later on. That was the same councilwoman, right,
Yep.
against the LGBT. Yeah, so that was
we need to see if she'll come on the show.
We need
We're gonna have a sit down. Have a sit down.
that would be. Oh my! I don't know if I can handle that.
No, but I mean, so what happens when the average person does something wrong, right? And then they realize what they've done wrong is kind of serious, right? They usually don't get humbled. They get defensive, right? Because they feel like if I defend my way out of this, I can make this go away, which ultimately just makes it worse. So I'm thinking maybe that we could have an environment where we can sit down and it's not hostile.
And I think also, at least what I've seen within certain Jewish communities too, when they're confronted, for example, about their own racism, right? Like that's an issue within different, specific Jewish communities too, despite the fact that Jews are a very diverse people with, many different skin tones and,
Right.
areas that they come from.
Yeah.
And so, I think it at times that's a reaction of somebody who is used to being oppressed in certain ways, and they're not used to being the one to mess up, and it kind of affects their personal identity of how they see themselves in some ways.
Okay. Yeah.
I've had that experience myself. I mean, yeah, no,
Really?
I mean, we've talked
Really?
about it.
No,
No, because I
I'm
try to
playing.
be an ally, but then sometimes something sets me off and I take offense and I act more like a
Yeah.
Karen than an ally. So yeah, I mean, we're all
Karen,
learning,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
We're trying to be better. I think that's the point. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, but we do live in a society now where it is easy to make a fatal error. Like, okay, Nick Cannon's mistake, it cost him, at least for a month or so, he lost a lot.
And I think there it depends a lot on how you apologize, right? Going back to what you said,
Yeah.
like if you
Crisis
truly,
comes 101, right? We know about that.
if you truly make amends and actually like put forth a what seems to be a good intentioned, thought out effort,
Right.
to make amends, to repair those relationships with the communities that you've damaged, that's
appreciated.
Yeah, and that's where we've seen like a lot of this, what people call cancel culture, I think, happen is when they don't.
No, they dig in,
Yeah,
and it's like they
Yeah.
refuse. We were talking, it's when
Yeah.
Kevin was on our show about a local restaurant that just had a racist sign hanging and
Yeah.
refused to.
Yeah, they're gonna dig in. They're not, because if you admit that you're wrong, I think when people feel like if they admit that they're wrong, it opens them up to more liability. Like they're gonna get more daggers thrown their way. So it's like, all right, well, I'm not gonna admit that I'm wrong. It's almost like being in a car accident, right? And you don't want to admit that you're wrong because you don't want to get sued. Like, oh, now I'm gonna get a car ticket and my insurance is gonna go. So I think it's falls along those same lines. So what? For people who don't understand what anti-Semitism is, right? Could you break down a few common examples of
Yeah, like
that?
microaggressions.
Yeah,
And
how that
good
could work.
question.
Yeah, so one of the things that actually comes up a lot in certain circles, especially in online forums, kind of like my things that I look for in conversations so I know to avoid the conversations are just anytime there is a conversation about Zionism in general, I'm like, probably don't want to be involved unless, just in general, because too quickly that can devolve into just plain anti-Semitism. And too often I feel like as a Jew, regardless of my stance on it, my voice, even if I am anti-Zionism, my voice gets drowned out and I end up becoming a target of a lot of the conversation. Other ones, references to the Rothschilds, globalism, those kind of things, lizard people, I'm just kind of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, pretty much. I guess the golden rule is if it's a stereotypical trope, just stay away from it, right?
Yeah.
Like they have money, or they're great lawyers and they're great, though. And every ethnic group has stereotypes, and so we should, as a rule, should just stay away from throwing stereotypes at people.
And so exactly, and I had actually one of the councilmen who I'm now very close with. He originally, right before he ran for council, made a comment about somebody, young black man going to prom and his extravagant prom. And the now councilman cited that and said, why is this young man getting criticism for it? Jewish people do this stuff all the time and nobody says anything. And I was just kind of like,
really? Did you just go there?
This is unnecessary. Didn't need to bring us into it. Why'd you do that?
Like if one group is being brought down, let's not bring another group down at the same time, right? People is like,
and I originally kind of challenged him on that. Admittedly, not in the best way that I could have, but it triggered a larger conversation, and eventually he did come back and was like, "I messed up there."
It's good though. I mean, that's why, like Brandon and I, we're trying to have these conversations. It's good when you are friends with people that are different and from different walks of life with you, and you feel comfortable enough that you can have those conversations.
And he was actually with this awful anti-Semitic council. He was actually one of the advocates and one of the people voting against and trying to hold them accountable because he had learned, and he was working with me to organize our local and immediate Jewish community to try to bridge gaps and educate his peers.
Right.
So it was really really encouraging to see him embrace what he's learned and really run with it.
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, I'll keep saying it. Intention is important. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we say things that are wrong, but our intentions aren't to be insulted. You know what I mean? So, and in that moment, he wasn't trying to be insulting to Jewish people, but it's like, no, you don't need to bring that up. Right.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
So now, Alana, so we heard about Trenton, but given your activism in this area, what would you say, has the climate gotten worse the way that it has with racial tensions in the past 4 years under this administration?
Yeah, actually, the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, which works on both anti-Semitic and racial equity and broader social justice issues.
And you have a role with them, right?
Yeah. I'm a fellow member of their 2020 Glass Leadership Institute.
It's awesome.
And I have some other announcements later about that, but I'll tell you offline. But yeah, so they've tracked this, and they found that there's an exponential increase in anti-Semitic hate crimes, violence, anti-Semitic incidences, in addition to the racist incidences and the racist hate crimes across the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, blood and soil. Jews won't. What did they say in their khakis?
The Jews
and
will not replace us. Yeah,
right.
That was serious. And then we've seen we had the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
There was a Hillel not too long ago that was burned to the ground repeatedly.
Wow.
So.
And I believe in Philly. I feel like this happened. There were vandalism to several Jewish cemeteries as well. Like they, knocking over.
That's been happening internationally, repeatedly.
Jewish so that's my next question. I mean, are we seeing this just in the U.S. or is this like a worldwide increase right now? Or
it is an international increase. There's a stark international increase.
What do you think stoking it internationally?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me that. I actually started to type an answer. I'm like, no, let's not go there. I think a lot of it is anti-Semitism has a long, long history in Europe, right? That's part of the reason why America has so many Jews. And that even before...
Which, by the way...
Yeah.
I don't know if you read this. I put it on my social media. I don't know if you know this either, but I found out this summer, not to interrupt you, but just to be part of the story. So we found out this summer my grandfather on my mom's side, who's still alive, he's 93.
Did you do a 23andMe?
He didn't do it. My aunt did it, but he was adopted through Catholic Charities, and he never, on his birth certificate, an Irish name was listed for his mother and an Italian name was listed for his father. And he tried his whole life to track them down, didn't have much luck. And then through this, we found out that the father listed on his birth certificate was not actually his father. And he's actually,
it was the Italian guy.
It was actually, it was, so his father was immigrated from Russia and was Jewish. So, yeah, I mean, I found out that that's part of my heritage this summer, which was pretty crazy and also cool.
Well, so there's a lot of, throughout that, and the reason I thought, as soon as you said the parents' heritage, I knew it was going to be the man, because Italy also has a very interesting and long history with the Jews, as does Spain, with the different inquisitions and whatnot, rooting out Christian non-believers, any non-Christian believers, from their masses. And then if you look to Russia, they have a long history of the pogroms leading up to the Holocaust, which chased a lot of Jews. So that's why Jews have done a lot of immigrating around Europe and being nomadic, which adds into the anti-Semitism, I think, because they're similar to the Romani people. Anytime you have a people that are not up, you don't feel like are of you, but are with you, there's a level of distrust there. Add to that the politics of the Middle East, America's involvement in that, and support of Israel, that just kind of exacerbates things. So you have a lot of historical anti-Semitism that is then exacerbated by just modern international politics.
Right.
She's not going to answer the question, the original question you posed.
Oh, yeah, she did. She did.
Is she? That was that you. Okay, all right.
Yeah, what's going on internationally? That's
No,
causing this,
what's causing it? Okay,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think she had a vision of somebody in her head. No, I'm playing with you. Wow. So, in your time in Mississippi,
Yeah.
So how was
We're
it?
going off the script.
Well, I mean, you have a very interesting background, right? And so you've been in different communities dealing with, being a triple minority, right? Double, I can't count. Female, Jewish.
Queer.
Oh, okay. I don't know. All right, so I was thinking about when the cameras came on and you were talking about living down south and being like the only white chick.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Right. So that's what I was thinking. The
Oh,
triple.
yeah. A
That's why I was
minority in that
thinking.
community and in
that's
Trenton.
yeah.
I
I
Okay.
mean, there was technically lots of white people there. I just wasn't gonna.
Not in your school,
And I just also the white people I met. The first time I would hang out with a lot of them, and they looked around and saw it was all white people, they would just start dropping N-words, and I'd be like, out, like not chilling.
These are not my people.
Yeah,
They
these are
look like me, but
clearly not my people.
wow.
Wow. So,
All the time, like I would just be like, and we can't hang out now.
just like that, right? Yeah. No, it's amazing how comfortable people can get when they think they're amongst their people, right? Like-minded people, and all of a sudden it just gets real comfortable. And that's when you have to use your privilege. If you're not, with them, then you have to let
need to
them
speak
know.
up.
Yeah, speak
Yep.
up that that's not cool. What they just said.
If you're in Mississippi or if you're at the Thanksgiving dinner table.
Just make sure you got some backup.
Yeah, I was definitely not equipped to address it down there.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I actually moved and like Trenton is because I felt more equipped to address those instances here in my home state of New Jersey and in a town that I felt I knew to some extent.
Definitely not quiet. Yeah, it's awesome.
No, I can
She's a
see
little
why
bit
you
like
guys
me
are
that way.
friends. Like, you guys are a problem. You're
Well, we're
just a
both in
problem.
communications too. That might have something to do with it, and
Yeah.
politics. Yeah, on the same side of the aisle.
No, that's cool.
And New Jersey politics is kind of an interesting. Yeah, it's kind of brutal.
No, it is. So, how much time did you spend in Mississippi, though? I mean,
3 years. 3 years. And upon returning, part of my inspiration and my goal was to implement the New Jersey Restorative Justice Pilot for public schools. So, a little bit of self-promotion, just got that passed. Got it
Awesome.
funded with
Kudos.
$500,000.
That's awesome. Congrats.
you want to just explain it for the people who don't know?
Yeah, so this pilot allows for, I think, 10 districts in New Jersey to receive funding to implement non-punitive disciplinary systems in their schools, so removing their suspensions and expulsions, replacing them with social-emotional learning, counseling, mediation, and the only districts that are allowed, I believe, to apply, at least under the preconceived pilot, was New Jersey's highest risk districts.
Oh, well, first of all, congratulations. No, that's a beautiful thing. No, I mean, that's the kind of activism that really makes a true difference instead of just the protesting or demonstrating. That's beautiful. So
I thought that was going to be my life's work, and I got it done in 5 years, so go figure.
So what are you going to do with the rest? What?
I don't know, just continuing to pursue against extremism and anti-Semitism and hate groups. Those have really, especially over the past 3 years become a focus of a lot of my activism.
And what can people watching this right now, and they want to be an ally the way they're trying to be an ally, you know, with people of color, and what can they do to help?
Well, I think the biggest thing is listen. You know, no matter who the person is, if they're telling you that, you know, something is negatively impacting them, whether it's something that you're doing or somebody else is doing, listen, because sometimes they're telling you what somebody else is doing because they're looking for that support. They're looking for an ally, or they're vetting you to see if, you know, are you like-minded as them?
Right.
So listen, be open to learning, and I think the hardest thing too is educating yourself. You know, and so that's something that, especially being in advocacy circles, being in learning circles, it's hard because you have these questions, and sometimes it's really hard for the person you're asking these questions of to answer them. And so don't use not getting an answer the first time, or a satisfactory answer, to not go looking for answers on your own, right? Google's a beautiful thing. There's tons of resources out there.
Right. That's awesome. And what are some good ones? I asked you to recommend a couple of books if you...
Well, so I would just, 2 websites I would promote for learning about just anti-Semitism and hate groups along all lines are the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League. I think there's
Excellent.
a lot of good learning and teaching resources there. And then some of the books that I brought with me, I just wanted to give a plug for 2 books that I really love. Open Borders, which it's written by 2 Jewish authors, and it's kind of framed by their family's experiences with immigration coming from the Holocaust, but it goes into the ethics and the science and the importance of immigration across the world and the importance of immigrants within our society.
Our nation was built on immigrants.
Exactly.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
And then this one, which I really love because it's like done in a textbook style with like graphics and like,
It's got pictures.
you know, pictures.
For those of you who can't
and,
read
like,
that good.
Yeah. Well, so this one's a full graphic novel. So this one's just all pictures.
Oh, my girls
that's
would love
cool.
that.
Yeah.
They're all about... The new generation is all about... I'm like,
graphic
there's
novels.
no words. What is going on here?
Yeah. So this one's a graphic novel style. This one's more like a fun picture
Nice,
textbook
yes.
style. And this is a kind of a training guide on the history of activism and social movements and how to get active yourself.
Oh, that's awesome.
So those are the 2 books, because and the reason I picked these 2 also is because for me, within my Jewish heritage, within my activism, the Jewish concept of tikkun olam, which means to better the world around you, has been central to kind of my identity.
I love that. I
Yeah.
didn't know about that.
Yeah,
Very
it's been
cool.
central to my identity, and central to a lot of my activism, even outside of like Jewish spaces.
That's awesome. I hadn't heard that term. It's funny because someone that I was telling, one of my Jewish friends, that I found this out this summer, they're like, no wonder you're an activist. Like, it's in your blood. But
Yeah.
that's an awesome term.
That's why
Yeah.
you hear about a lot of activism
cool.
within Jewish circles too.
Yeah. Awesome. And did you bring something that you want to show tonight?
Oh, it's just my puppy's jacket.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's beautiful. It's not cold enough. Yeah.
No,
it
it's
turned out to be
not.
a really nice night again on the back deck here. But
Yeah, no mosquitoes.
Yeah.
They're getting blown away.
Yeah.
Oh, and I didn't even
thank
give you
God.
bug spray.
No, I don't need it. I'm good.
Reading this again. Sorry. Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
this was a real
I really
pleasure and a
learned a
treat.
lot.
Is there anything else you'd like to plug? Anything you'd like to say? Anything that you would like to put out there to the world to help?
I would just say that no matter who it is, we all need to break out of our silos and work together. That dismantling white supremacy and dismantling those systems of oppression needs to be, it's a communal activity. And they affect us all, and so we all need to work together. And I think it's
So true.
every activist's duty, and everybody who has the passion for that, to work to bridge gaps.
That definitely gets it.
Yes. No, that's beautiful. No. Thank you so much for all that you do, everything that you do, your willingness to share, your willingness to fight, your willingness to get dirty and check people. No, because that's critical. I mean, you
I
don't
get
have to
checked
be, no, but I mean that's part of the game.
Yep.
It's give and take, because you're learning this. when you're active and you're trying to make a change, you're learning. Like, we all don't know it all. So,
and you can't be too scared not to make a mistake, right? I mean, we all make mistakes, but you got to be vocal and do the best that you can.
I
yeah.
agree with
correct.
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Although it's scary sometimes.
Yeah.
No, it is scary. But what's scarier is living in a world where people like Donald Trump get to set the pace for everything, and we're experiencing that now, and it's not nice.
And
it's
too
only
many
getting
people
worse.
stay quiet.
Right. So, we have the Kellys and the Alanas that will get dirty and
And the Brandon.
Well, I'm in the middle. You guys are like, I need to learn from you. But whatever you can do to make a difference, even if it's having a conversation at Thanksgiving when someone says something inappropriate, and say it in a nice way. You don't have to throw food at anybody, but just correct them. But so thank you, Alana, so much for all that you do and for being here.
Yes, thank you.
And for bringing
Great.
the books. You're the first one to have visual displays. So
She came prepared.
she did. So
The teacher in me.
Yeah,
There you go.
totally.
Kelly, do you have anything that you want to say closing out, or?
I don't. I just think it's just to echo what Alana said and what we've said earlier. I mean, we all, part of the problem of the activists that are trying to make the world a better place and make people less oppressed is that we only focus on our cause, our one single cause, and we don't come together and unify for
Correct.
all the people that are being oppressed, and so that we can all be lifted up and find equity. And so that's really important.
Yes. Because if one of us is doing well, we can all do well, and if one of us is doing bad, we're all going to do bad. So let's just shake it all out. Let's get rid of all of it. So, all right,
Definitely.
we're leaving. We're done. So
Thank you.
until the next time, please remember, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. This is on YouTube if you want to watch. If you want to listen, it's on all the podcast outlets, and we are on Instagram. It's the DCMK at the MCK podcast. I don't remember any of this stuff. It's been such a long week, but just reach out, comment, subscribe, like, whatever, and
You
we
said it
will
right.
respond.
That's what
I
it
did?
is, yeah.
Okay, thank you. You
You
see
can
how she
also-
had me out there, hanging out there? Right?
You're like, is this right now? The Don't Call Me Karen podcast. Yeah.
Right.
DCMK.
All right, guys. Until the next time, we are out of here. Bye-bye.
Bye.